it was the equivalent of the Bible. You know, the hotel put it in the drawer for people. And of course, there are comic book editions and lots of variants. Next, please. Lots of Pompeian music. But John Philip Sousa thought his Last Days of Pompeii suites were the best thing he ever did. And again, you can go online and listen to snippets of these. And one of my favorite things in the exhibition, next please, is this little book, which is a guidebook to Pompeii following the novel. And this is the equivalent of the sideways tours of the Santa Barbara wine country, or what would be the Hobbit tours of New Zealand, where the fiction has overlaid the archaeology. That's certainly true in the world of art, where there's a great symbiotic relationship, next please, such as this painting of Glaucus and Nydia by Sir Lawrence Alma-Tadema. And in the background on the right, you can see statues, tables, and mosaics that are all meticulous copies of items in the Naples Museum from the Pompeian excavations, but have come to support a kind of Pompeian fantasy. And of course, I said Nydia is so incredibly popular. Next, please. In the exhibition, we have 3 versions of the 167 that Randolph Rogers' workshop made of the blind flower girl Nydia, listening her way through the eruption in various sizes. And the central one is local. It's from the Forest Lawn Museum here in Glendale. As far as performance, next please, very early on, as early as 1835, the novel was adapted to the stage in London, and throughout the 19th century was incredibly popular. By the 1880s, before the advent of cinema and disaster films, next please, James Payne had traveling shows throughout the United States. The program in the upper left is from Cincinnati, I think 1881, the headlines in the middle from Minneapolis, and the newspaper clipping in the far right from Los Angeles, where downtown, near the courthouse, there was a huge artificial lake and water park dug, artificial Vesuvius was built, and below is the performance at Coney Island, and you can see there are Egyptians in the front, there are dancing girls, there's a Roman city with Vesuvius in the back, and there would be gladiatorial games, chariot races, and as night fell, there would be fireworks before the city was destroyed. As you see, Pompeii will be destroyed again tonight, and it's happening night after night around the country. Next, please. These are photographs of taken in London in 1898 during the day. You can see the crowds looking at the city. And next, please. Later that evening, the volcano erupts. So the story, Bulwer's story, in abbreviated form, was being performed on stage in these pyro dramas, as they were called. And it was one of the most popular subjects for early cinema. Some of the short films that really condense the novel are lost, but we have still photographs of some of them. Next, please, such as this one from Italy in 1908, Luigi Maggi's production. And next, please, here is a tableau. You notice the chair off to the side, so it's a photograph that hadn't been cropped. The volcano's erupting, and you can see Nydia in the foreground, looking on right, rather like the statue leading Glaucus and Ione out of the city. And I'm curious whether the film we're going to see tonight follows this pictorial trope. Next, please. And here, from the 1930 Elterio Rodolfi's production, and this one is available on DVD, so you can all get this one and see it at home. We did have a wonderful screening outdoors at the Getty Villa earlier this year, and I'll show you just a few more scenes of this. This is Glaucus protecting Ione, I'm sorry, Nydia, the blind Nydia with wide open eyes. Next, we have the scene of the evil Egyptian priest Arbaces. Next, we have chariot races. And then finally, we had colorized red versions for the eruption. And this was the first and the earliest preserved full-length version. It was 13 years later that Gallone and Palermi did the version we're going to see tonight. And I'm not going to show you a lot of that because you're going to see in a minute, but you see the sets are much more sophisticated. They're using classical statuary. The version we're going to see, like these prints, are colorized. Some of it was actually shot at Pompeii, but there were very, very elaborate sets. Next, please. Oops, we've fallen behind on my screen. So I'm going to go forward again. So here's what we're going to see. Very, very much more sophisticated, with a lot of, again, archaeological quotations. Next, please. Such as here, the scene of the fountain. Now, next, please. We also see that our film on the right is quoting the paintings. So again, while drawing on archaeology, it's also drawing on fantasy. And that's one of the reasons we felt that it was so important to have film in the exhibition about the myth of Pompeii, to have popular work as well as painting and sculpture. Next, please. So here again, you see a different painting serving as the model for the scenographers in the film. This film, which was the most lavish and expensive of Italy before the Depression, before the war, didn't do as well as it was hoped. Nonetheless, during the Depression, there was an American version, next please, which took the title, but in no way followed the story of Bulwer-Lytton. This is the Shostak and Cooper version. These are the same folks who made King Kong, and they tried this after King Kong as a sequel, and it didn't do as well. In this version, the protagonist is a blacksmith who needs to get money to help his sick wife in his health coverage problems. So he became a gladiator and slave trader, but eventually sees the light, and during the eruption converts to Christianity. Christianity is a major theme in the Bulwer-Lytton story. It gets erased from the early films, but I understand it has a presence in the version we're going to see today. This film didn't do very well either. This is the only American production after the war. Next, please. In 1959 was the great Steve Reeves production, which is an Italian, Spanish, and German co-production. And again, has nothing to do with the plot of Bulwer, has an entirely different story. Also in the 50s, there were interesting films made about archaeology. Next, please. And the most interesting and most acclaimed was Viaggio in Italia, Italian Journey by Rossellini, starring Ingrid Bergman and George Sanders as a dysfunctional, estranged couple who go to Pompeii, see the excavations at the climax of the film, see a dead couple whose body casts are being excavated, and that makes them reconsider their own relationship. The body casts, some of which we have in the excavations, of course, aren't the real bodies from Pompeii. They're modern sculpture, they're modern creations, plaster according to voids where the bodies have disappeared. Next, please. But that didn't stop the horror filmmakers to create The Curse of the Faceless Man. And we have clips of many of these films running in the exhibition. And this continues to this day. Next, please. Including The Simpsons, Doctor Who, and Scooby-Doo. So this tradition of Pompeian invention continues, and of course, next please, the Getty Villa itself is built as a model of a villa buried by Vesuvius, not from Pompeii, but from nearby Herculaneum. Next please, upstairs here in the villa's new exhibition galleries, you'll be able to see a great variety of works. The film clips I mentioned, so the paintings you've seen, as well as works by modern masters, Dali, Warhol, Rauschenberg, Rothko, Gormley, spanning the 18th to the 21st century. So, next slide, please. I encourage you all, please come to the villa. The show goes to January 7th. You only need reservations, which you can get at www.getty.edu.